Like many Saskatchewan communities, Yorkton has seen its share of protest marches, from angry farmers to political rallies. But the strangest of all happened about 100 years ago, when the Doukhobors marched into Yorkton, nude. 7,500 Doukhobor immigrants arrived in Canada in 1899. They were religious refugees, hoping to build new lives free from the persecution they'd faced back in Russia. The Doukhobors believed that God lives in every person, making priests, churches, even the Bible obsolete. They were pacifists and lived in communes. When the largest group settled in the Yorkton area, their lifestyle took some getting used to on the part of the locals.
They were different. They didn't dress the same as other people, and they didn't speak the same language. And people probably didn't understand about their communal way of life.
Ruth Smith's roots run deep in Yorkton. Her father worked at the general store when the Doukhobors first arrived.
Once when we were coming home on Sunday from the lake, they were all standing outside. It was a very warm night in their national costumes, singing. And it was the most beautiful thing I had ever heard. And Dad stopped the car, and we sat there and listened for quite a long time. And I got the feeling then that, you know, he liked the Doukhobor people.
Peter Verrigan was the spiritual leader of the Doukhobors. His followers worked hard the first few years. They built their villages and cleared their land. When there weren't enough horses, the women were hitched to plows to get the crop in the ground. It was images like this that earned Doukhobors a reputation for being strange and backward. But in many ways, they were ahead of the times.
They ran the village as a sort of a business, I guess you'd call it, like a cooperative. And they shared whatever they made, and then they made decisions about how they would spend their money. One of the interesting things about them was that the women were allowed an equal share in the meetings, which was very unusual at that time.
But a splinter group began acting strangely. They called themselves the Sons of Freedom. When Verrigan suggested that animals should not be exploited, they freed their livestock, burned their leather shoes, and refused to eat any animal products. Behavior like this provoked a reaction.
Probably the same way that people would react today. If somebody's different, they can't be right, you know, sort of thing. And people try to live decent lives like that. Part of their religion was to see a spark of God in every individual. And I think the more Christian people try to behave, the harder time they have.
Responding to public pressure, the Canadian government decreed the Doukhobors had to register their land individually, effectively forcing them out of their communes. They were also expected to swear allegiance to the Crown, something they associated with military service, which was against their pacifist beliefs. That's when the protest marches began, and the Sons of Freedom decided to go nude.
They didn't have any way of protesting that would really make people pay attention to them, and they were in danger of losing their land.
But going without clothes had its drawbacks.
I know this country is not the country to go marching nude in. I think after a while they gave up because of the mosquitoes.
The protests didn't change anything. Angry that the government had betrayed his people, Verrigan led over 5,000 of his followers to British Columbia, where they started over. The Doukhobors simply abandoned the homes and farms they worked so hard to build. Yorkton hosted a mini land rush, as the Doukhobor property, some 400,000 acres, was divided up and resettled. For Ruth Smith's father, the departure of the Doukhobors was bittersweet.
I think it was one of the high points of his life, but he'd never seen nude women before. But I think that Dad really felt sorry for them. I know he didn't like the land rush, and didn't feel that they had been quite fairly treated, because they'd been promised freedom when they came here.
Those Doukhobors who chose to stay behind gave in to the government and took up land as individual homesteaders. Their descendants still live in this area. And although the villages are now gone, there's still many reminders here of Peter Verrigan, the Doukhobors, and utopia they never found. I'm Bill Waiser.